In these videos, I'm going to break down one of my favorite plates I've shot recently, and we're going to go into video of the session so you could really see what I was doing and kind of what I was thinking when I was doing it, as well as looking at the actual plate and breaking that down as well. So this is the plate we're going to be breaking down. Definitely one of my favorites that I've recently taken. I think the depth on it is amazing. I love the contrast, and I just really love the lighting on it. This one's kind of tricky because once you involve a cowboy hat or any sort of hat, it's definitely hard to get those eyes to really show and not overpower them with shadows, or not having to lift the hat up to get enough light onto the eyes. So that's why I thought this would be a good example or a good first breakdown of a plate. Here's a video of the session, and I just want you guys to see kind of what was going on and what it's like when I photograph a solo portrait. This one's a little quicker because it was a couple's portrait package. So I photograph both of them first, and then I do individual portraits of the both of them. So right now I'm just kind of focusing everything up, making sure everything's good. But here you can see I noticed that there wasn't enough light filling the eyes and underneath the hat. So that's one big reasoning behind why I use a clamshell reflector. It's not just for the catch lights. It's so I could make sure I'm getting enough light onto my subject. You can see right here, if you look up onto the ceiling and back here, how much light is actually kicking off that clamshell reflector. I mean, that's a lot of light. It was pretty kind of flat right now. And then you could see I kicked it a little more towards him just to get that light to kind of fill underneath those eyes. So you noticed right here, I asked him to lift his chin up a little bit, and just that little bit of movement gave us more light to kind of kick up towards his eyes. And then this is final focus. And now right here, I think it's really important to note that when I go to take the photo and I fire the flash, I'm actually firing my shutter right here, and I'm leaving it open until I fire that flash. So that's about 3 seconds of ambient light coming in and illuminating my photo. So that's a good chunk of light to kind of brighten up the whole image. As far as lighting goes, I have one 1200 watt key light, and that's going to be our main light. That's going to be the main source of light that's going to light our subject. I have that clamshell reflector. I have a 600 watt backlight that's just shooting light onto the backdrop. So that's going to kind of separate our subject from the backdrop. And you really can't see it in this video, but I have another 600 watt light that's going to be kind of a hair light. I know that hat is dark, and I know my backdrop is going to be pretty dark. So I don't want the dark hat to fall into the dark backdrop and completely lose the hat. So I knew we needed a pretty hefty light onto the hat to separate it. So if we go over to our portrait, you'll see we have that one hair light that's giving us all this light right here. It's giving us this nice little rim light, filling some of that hair to separate it, and then giving us a nice shoulder light. This side, I wasn't too worried about because I knew we had that backdrop light that's shining onto the backdrop, and I knew it was going to brighten up that one side of the subject and separate at least that side from the backdrop. Our clamshell reflector is giving us a really nice catch light. Now, the thing with catch lights, especially when using a clamshell reflector, I feel like getting the catch light low in the eye is going to be a lot more dramatic and it's going to look a lot more natural. If we lifted up that clamshell reflector too much and we had that catch light going through the center of the eye, it's going to look kind of weird and it's going to make it feel a lot less natural. And then you'll see we have all this light right here and on the nose, and a good chunk of that is coming from that clamshell reflector. If we didn't have that clamshell reflector, I can almost guarantee you that this whole underside of the hat would be pretty dark. I don't think it would be jet black, but we would lose a lot of definition in the brows, under the eyes, and kind of on that forehead point. And all that is our main focal point. That's what your eyes are drawn towards. And that's kind of the first thing we're going to see when we look at that portrait. So a lot of my focus is going to be getting the eyes and everything around the eyes as properly exposed as possible. We have really nice catch lights on the lips, on the nose, and then on the cheekbones. A lot of that is showing definition and it's showing dimension. If we didn't have that and we tried to just blast as much light as we could onto our subject, we're going to lose all of those features and it's just going to kind of mush into one highlight. So again, the thing that's going to separate your tintypes from other people's tintypes is going to be your contrast and your midtones. I feel like the midtones are extremely important because with tintypes, you end up getting a lot of highlight and a lot of shadow. So you can get highlights really, really easy and you can get shadows really, really easy. But the midtones, that's where I think a lot of people struggle with, and that's what's going to make your image look really flat. And when I told him to lift up his chin, I know it didn't look like a lot, but if he didn't, the way my camera's angled, his chin probably would have been down here, and that hat would have tilted forward and most likely blacked out all the eyes. And when we're photographing hats, we want as much light as possible to strike the eyes. And like I said, a lot of that is going to be that clamshell reflector. Also, that one 600 watt backlight, that was lighting up the hat, the shoulder, and the hair. So this one, that was giving us the light on the hat, the hair, and the shoulder. I purposely directed it more towards the front of him. I didn't want to feather it too much, but I wanted to make sure I still had light coming over his shoulder, because the light coming over his shoulder, that's the light that's going to hit the clamshell reflector, bounce back up, and give us a lot of this light that's under his chin and under his eyes. If we didn't have that backlight, we would lose a lot of this light because we don't have enough light with just that 1200 watt key light to give us what we want. So I really like feathering a backlight or even two backlights a little past the subject and hitting that clamshell reflector and then bouncing back up at our subject. That's a really good way and a really easy way to get more light onto your subject without having to put more key lights in front of your subject and potentially blowing out your photo. So I like to use backlights to bounce off that clamshell and really help us out with exposure. So just kind of breaking it down, we had that one 600 watt that was lighting up our hat, our hair, and our shoulder. Also, it was going past the shoulder and bouncing back up to our subject, lighting the eyes, lighting the under chin, giving us a nice light underneath the nose, and just giving us more light in general. We had one 600 watt backlight that was lighting just enough of that backdrop to really separate this side of our subject. If we didn't have that, I can almost guarantee you that all would have been black, and the hat, the hair, and some of the shoulder would have just completely blacked out into that backdrop. Then we had one 1200 watt key light that was lighting up the front of our subject. Like I said, it's really tricky when we're photographing hats, and the last thing you want to do is pull the hat up or make them lift their head up really high, because it's going to look so unnatural. So we have to work around that, and we have to make sure we're getting light underneath that hat. And then to finish it off, we had the clamshell reflector with that backlight bouncing off, and then that key light is bouncing off and giving us a lot more of that light onto the front of our subject. Also, it's giving us those really nice catch lights. Remember, you don't want the catch lights in the center of the pupils. You want them just to kind of cup the bottom, and that's going to look a lot more natural. So yeah, that's how I shot this portrait, and I hope you guys enjoyed the breakdown, and I hope it wasn't too confusing. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'd be happy to kind of go over it and explain some things with you.